recording shows that it has started, then you can begin. All right? It has.
First of all, what in your opinion are the basic human rights?
It is not a matter of my opinion. There's an international agreement where fundamental freedoms and basic human rights are defined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was agreed upon by the members of United Nations in 1948. And that Universal Declaration of Human Rights, you can say, is the basic document from which all other rights derive. And there are five fundamental rights, five basic human rights. I mean, there are five categories rather: economic rights, social rights, cultural rights, civil rights, and political rights. So these are five basic types of rights that, and then I mean, there are details. I mean, what, if, for instance, social rights will mean right to health, right to education, and so on and so forth. And economic rights would mean right to decent work, decent wage, and employment, and conditions where equal opportunities are provided to all citizens. Likewise, political rights would mean right to association, right to assembly, right to a democratic political process where all citizens can participate. So civil rights would mean freedom of expression, and freedom of speech, and what is left. Cultural rights would mean freedom to speak your language, freedom to practice your culture, freedom to practice your faith. So these are five fundamental categories of rights. And then there's something really interesting, that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights was put together by a special committee. And the first draft, or the process, began with a committee of authors, and one of the co-authors was the Pakistani representative to the UN, which most people forget in Pakistan. So it is, so that is where it derives from. And then we have international covenants and protocols. Then human rights are enshrined in our own constitution, fundamental freedoms, basic principles of policy. I mean, there are many legal instruments, as well as which are based on ethical values, which actually provide the framework for different kinds of rights. Finally, one small thing is that as the world grows, and as our the kinds of development we have seen in the area of environment, so in my humble view, environmental rights should actually be seen as the sixth category of rights. um, it is not in, I mean, it is a part of international conversations and national conversations or regional conversations at different levels, but it is not yet introduced at the same level internationally, because of different kinds of pressures of transnational companies and large governments. Otherwise, the sixth category would be, in future, I hope, environmental rights.
So where does Pakistan stand in providing those same basic human rights?
Well, if you look at the Pakistani constitution, which is the instrument which is the basis for negotiation between citizens and the state, or the institutions of the state, and individual citizens as well as community of citizens, there are certain rights enshrined in the constitution. I mean, there are a few discriminations in our constitution also. For instance, there are certain clauses within the constitution which discriminate against people belonging to minority faiths in Pakistan. But overall, it's a progressive constitution. Overall, I mean, there are changes that need to be made. As a human rights defender, or a civil society activist, I would say that there should be no discrimination whatsoever in the constitution when it comes to people of different faiths, or race, religion, caste, color, creed, or sex. But there are many other positive aspects within the constitution. So the legal guarantees are there, but unfortunately, those are not implemented in letter and spirit. And so we find that the situation of human rights in Pakistan as we speak, perhaps not for the affluent and the elites, but for majority of Pakistanis is pretty dismal. And it is something that we should all worry about. I mean, any concerned citizen should worry about the fact that basic freedoms, fundamental rights in Pakistan are not, realized the way we would want them to be realized.
Okay.
You want me
Thank
to
you.
give
So,
examples?
hmm?
You want me to give any examples, or you and that should suffice?
If you want to show, you can give an example.
For example, in Pakistan, if you look at the gender rating that is internationally done, Pakistan has further slipped down in its ranking in the overall gender index, the global gender index, where the rights of women or rights of women and girls, are at the bottom rung if you look at the rest of the world, including many Islamic countries. And if you look at the freedom of expression, the press freedom index, Pakistan is again at the bottom. So that is something that is quite worrisome. And if you look at the economic rights in Pakistan, we all know very well the kind of the minimum wage, which still is a pittance, is not even the minimum wage is not paid to people who work in Pakistan. There are no regulations. There's growing unemployment. There's elite capture of economy, and I mean, these are some examples that I can give you, and there are indicators and evidences. Then there are forced disappearances in Pakistan of political dissenters across the country. I'm afraid more so in Balochistan and parts of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, but if you look at the rest of the country, you would find the same situation. Many things do not get reported to the press because, again, it is all linked. Uh, excuse me, because
No.
it is all linked. I
Sorry.
mean, there are disappearances and they are not reported in the press because the press is not free. There are certain things that you will find reported in the press which are seen not to pose any immediate threat to the powers that be. So and again, there is a democratic imbalance. There is a civil military divide, civil military imbalance in Pakistan that we have observed for decades, unending. So there are many examples where fundamental freedoms are not realized in Pakistan.
Right. Thank you. Now I will pass on to Samir, who will ask the next few questions.
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
How much do you think corruption plays the part in the violation of human rights?
What kind of corruption? Political and corruption of attitudes, or financial corruption? Because we
Overall
tend to
corruption, but
club the two together.
considering the political as it is more related.
I think corruption is a major issue in Pakistan, but as far as the violation of fundamental freedoms is concerned, it is not the corruption of individuals which is the issue. It is not sticking to the constitution, which I think is is an intellectual corruption and intellectual dishonesty. That is a bigger problem of for in Pakistan, in my view. I'm not holding a brief for financial corruption, of course, but financial corruption is possible if you do not go by the law, if the rule of law is not adhered to, if the constitution is not adhered to. So if you do not have a framework to govern a country, then you will find corruption rampant. So it's a chicken and egg situation. I mean, you have corruption because you do not respect the constitution, and you do not respect the constitution because you want to continue with corruption.
I see. And in what ways can abuse lead to human rights violation?
Could you come again? Repeat, please.
And in what ways abuse can lead to human rights violation?
Which kind of abuse? You
Domestic
mean?
abuse.
Well, I mean, it is any kind of, actually, if you allow me to rephrase your question, any abuse is human rights violation. Anything that you call abuse is human rights violation. So whether it is domestic abuse, or whether it is harassment at workplace, whether it is any kind of harassment at workplace, or whether it is abusing your powers for undeserved gains, which you were referring to perhaps in your previous question, it is also an abuse. So all kinds of abuse are, something that you see. Abuse, in legal terms, it would mean that somebody's freedoms or somebody's rights are being violated.
And can we say that most kinds of abuses and violation are due to corruption? Like, are they linked to corruption in any ways?
You see, these are very general terms. I mean, when you say any kind of abuse is linked to corruption, I mean, if you are mistreating a child or you are hiring a 12-year-old child to help at your home, it has nothing to do with whether you are financially corrupt at your work or not. So, I mean, there are, everything in Pakistan does not revolve around corruption, unlike what the current Prime Minister says. I mean, there are many fundamental structural issues in the country, and there are many behavioral issues in the country. Sometimes you would find people who are dead honest, apparently, but they are very abusive in their personal relationships. So all kinds of abuse are not necessarily linked to one simple. I mean, the world is not in. I mean, you are very young to appreciate that, but it is good to remind you that the world is not in black and white. I mean, there are many shades of gray in between, and individual behaviors and attitudes have a role to play. And there is a lot of civic education that is needed in Pakistan, and that civic education has to do. A lot of it has to do with civic education and sensitivity among individuals who exploit other people or carry out abuse. It is not necessarily financial corruption that leads to everything that is bad in Pakistan.
I would like to add to Samir's question on how bad do you think is the situation in Pakistan regarding domestic abuse, child abuse, any sort of abuse in that matter?
You see, Pakistan unfortunately has become a very radicalized, intolerant, and brutalized society, where people have become very angry and unhappy with their general conditions, and that has led to a lot of violence and a lot of intolerance at different levels, and that is why you see crime against children increasing in the past few years, and they're being reported. I mean, there have always been crimes against children or crimes against the weak. The weaker segments suffer most, whether they are women, whether they are, and there are degrees of marginalization. So if you're a poor man, or if you're marginalized, but if you are a poor dispossessed woman, you're more marginalized. And if you're a poor dispossessed minority woman in Pakistan, you're the most marginalized. Likewise, transgender are marginalized. So you see, in Pakistan, domestic violence has increased. In Pakistan, crime against children has increased manyfold over the past few years. One thing is that we should accept that it is being reported more. So it was not reported as much earlier because media has become more conscious about it, and the society is getting more conscious about it, which is a good thing. These issues are being raised. And these concerns are being taken up at different levels, but unfortunately, situation on the ground at a household level, or at a community level, in a village, or in a low income neighborhood, or even in middle income and higher middle income neighborhoods, it is not a good situation. You would find, for instance, there are very few countries in the world where you find a judge, whether the person is a sessions judge at the district level, abusing a 14-year-old maid. One, that you keep a 14-year-old to work to help with your chores, and then you torture that girl. So you see, that is rampant in Pakistan, unfortunately, now.
So do you think most of the domestic violence cases and child abuse cases go under the radar because of family traditions, because of community guidelines set in within themselves, so they don't usually report those kind of issues?
Even the ones which are reported are alarming, and you are absolutely right that that is the tip of the iceberg, and the number of cases that are reported itself, as I said, are alarming. But yes, traditions play an important role. That is why I was saying that civic education and sensitization of people is very important. But everything cannot be blamed on culture. If material conditions of people improve, their attitudes towards life and towards other people changes. So a lot of anger and a lot of intolerance that has seeped into our society is because of the material conditions of people, which means, simply speaking, their economic conditions have actually worsened. So there's a small group of people who have become very rich, and there's a large majority which is deprived, and that inequality, that deprivation, that inability to access basic rights, or fulfill basic needs, has created more anger and more intolerance, as I said before. It is all sort of all factors have to be considered, including cultural factors, because there's an honor that we attach with a woman's body. And if a woman's body or a girl is violated, then the family still in Pakistan tries to shove it under the carpet, unless a murder happens. And likewise, there are boys who are abused, and it's all kinds of abuse. I mean, it is physical abuse as well as sexual abuse, as well as psychological abuse, that children have to face in Pakistan, and people who are domestic help have to face in Pakistan. And there is one perhaps historic factor also, because Pakistan, as a part of the Indian subcontinent, the South Asian subcontinent, it is a very casteist society. So it is not just the Hindu faith in which caste system is practiced. The Muslims also practice it without announcing it. So I think these are areas which need to be changed and which need to be addressed.
Right. Fahad, please continue with your questions.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Ji walaikum assalam.
What are the steps taken by the government to improve the situation, and to what extent have they been successful?
You see, the government or different government. I mean, this particular government, unfortunately, has no priority for human rights, and they've gone back on any of their commitments that they made during their election campaign. So you do not find. I mean, you find increasing unemployment. You find all sorts of price hikes, and also, I mean, as far as economic freedoms are concerned, freedom of press is at its worst since General Zia's time. And different other in different other areas also, there hasn't been enough legislation either. There's a National Commission for Human Rights, which is a statutory constitutional body set up by the Parliament. It has not been revived since the last 1.5 years. There's no chairperson of that commission. There are no members of that commission. Likewise, the National Commission on Status of Women. I'm just giving you, you can look up for these institutions which are there to look after human rights in Pakistan from the from the side of the state. So they are not functional. Most of the bodies that have to monitor and correct the course of the executive as far as realization of human rights is concerned are not even in place. So that you can see that what the priorities are. But over the years, including this government, but also previous governments, over the years, there's been some positive legislation in the Parliament, pro-women legislation, for instance, and the Supreme Court judgments that have come, or the court judgments about the transgender persons in Pakistan. So there has been a lot of positive development in that sense. Work. I mean, there's a lot of work, more work to be done. Pakistan is not one of the ideal states when it comes to, or society even, when it comes to, right. Is that all?
Yeah. Have there been accounts of violence in Pakistan that have led violation of human rights?
I would like to rephrase this question. By violence, I was trying to say, like when Pakistan goes to war with someone, or when there's a civil war, what is the situation? Are the victims of war treated like humans, or is there are their human rights violated? For example, in the 1965 war with India, when we captured any Indian troops, were they given their basic human rights? That's what I meant by the question.
You see, interestingly, both Pakistan and India have not violated the Geneva Convention after announced wars, but there's been skirmishes all along our history, and there's been, violations of human rights when it comes to combatants and non-combatants from both sides. But when it comes to a proper war, like the two wars that were fought between Pakistan in 65 and 71, and the soldiers that were captured, the Pakistan has not violated the Geneva Convention of treating prisoners of war, and likewise there hasn't been. There are cases like there was a case of Sipahi Maqbool Hussain, whose tongue was slit and was kept in India for 40 years. But there are some cases where the rights of the prisoners of war were violated, but largely between the two countries, they have adhered to Geneva Convention. One example is the Indian pilots that we returned to India 2 years ago.
So when India accuses us of violating the human rights of Hindu Kashmiris, do you think that's true? Do you think Pakistani army violates the rights of Hindu Kashmiris?
There are no Hindu Kashmiris.
No,
There, Hindus,
when
Hindus have their population. Hindus have most of the Hindu population in Pakistan is in Punjab and Sindh, with some in Balochistan and some in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. There are, almost exceptions would be there to prove the rule, but there are almost no Hindu Kashmiris in Pakistan.
uh,
If you're
uh,
speaking about the Hindu community at large,
hmm.
yes, India accuses Pakistan of, violating their rights. But it is not. It is for me as a Pakistani citizen. It does not matter what India says. I don't work for Pakistani Foreign Office. I live in Pakistan, and I have to care for my fellow citizens. So I think Pakistan does violate the rights of minorities, whether they are Hindus, whether they are Christians, even whether they come from smaller sects within the larger Muslim faith. So I think there is a problem that Pakistan has to deal with internally without responding to what India says or does, because India's own human rights record is miserable. Particularly in the last
Right.
5 to 6 years, India has gone from bad to worse when it comes to treating minorities, and when it comes to treating people, smaller ethnic groups, like they in people living in the northeast, or people living in the east, and Kashmiris, of course. So So I think we should worry less about what India says and concentrate more on setting things right within our home.
Right. Shahir, if you would like to continue with your own questions, please.
How much time would you need? Because I have another meeting in about 10 minutes.
Uh, 10 minutes would be enough.
Okay.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Ji, walaikum assalam.
Sir, what do you think is the best way to tackle issues we have just discussed?
Let the parliament function. Let the civil society identify and criticize what the government and the parliament are not doing right. This is at the structural level. At the social level, we have to educate ourselves first, and our circles of influence in the next stage, and society at large and at the third stage, that how important these fundamental freedoms are. What I consider good for myself is good for everybody else. The kind of opportunities that I want to seek for myself should be available to everyone, and it has to be a collaborative, inclusive, plural society, and competition should only be on the sports ground. So I think that is something that we need to understand as people.
Yes, sir. Do you think minorities like transgenders are more at threat when it comes to abuse, corruption, or violence? If so, why do you think that is?
No, because anybody, you see, as I said earlier, that anybody who's weak in a society, if you come from a weaker segment of society, if you're a woman, you're less privileged than a man. If you're a man who's not Muslim, you're less privileged than a Muslim woman. And as I said before, I mean, if you're a minority Muslim woman, you're least privileged. So they are victims of abuse more easily because they have no sort of social capital to draw upon, or any influence on institutions which make decisions that affect their lives or that provide justice. So they are more at the receiving end.
Thank you,
Right,
sir.
thank you.
Thank you.